Hello YouTubers, thank you for stopping by. This is James. I'm outside again working on my raised bed garden, so this would be part 2. Stay tuned. So I've been getting a lot of email asking questions about this raised bed garden I'm building, what I tend to plant in it, and how it was built. So rather than wait until it was all done, I decided to do a short continuation video to show what has happened so far and what the next steps are going to be. So I'm going to hold the camera and walk you around. So we've managed to attach an 8-foot box to that 12-foot box over there. And then there's a little 3-foot extension and what is going to turn into a 5-foot box there. Then there'll be another 3-foot and on and on. So what we're going to have to do now is take all of the wood chips out of these boxes because I want to install this wire, 1/4 inch, I think they call it wire fabric, in the bottoms of each box to keep my little critters out. We have moles and voles in the yard, and this will stop them from coming in. Let's see how well the DeWalt shears cut wire. Amazing. So this is the wire in the bottom of my boxes so that no critters come eating my vegetables. And now I'm going to be filling these boxes at least halfway up with these wood chips. I have too much of them, and there's something called hugelkultur, which is what I was intending to do. And what they normally do in hugelkultur is they put logs and twigs and branches and wood that can decompose and then become compost for your soil. But because I have an overabundance of chips that have still a lot of green in them, this will compost nicely, and eventually I'll just have to overfill the box with soil after it all settles. So that's the plan. Let's get to it. So I have some seedlings I've been growing under grow lights that I started 2 or 3 weeks ago. On the left there I have leeks, and then I have kale and turnips, and then a whole tray of carrots, lettuce, and more lettuce. And because I needed to get these transplanted soon for my late fall, early winter harvest, I decided to change my direction on the planter garden. Stand by. Like I said before, I filled up the garden beds halfway with wood chips, and yesterday I got 2 loads of the best topsoil at our nursery, little more than a cubic yard per load, and that was enough for me to fill up this many of the garden beds. And so what I'm going to do next is amend the soil with peat moss, some compost, and a little bit of bone and blood meal to add some nitrogen. And I'm going to get these seedlings planted before they get too big for their britches. So this 12-foot box on the end was the first one that I made in the previous video, and as you can see, I've used the same method to add various size planter boxes onto each other. So it's a very modular system, and this post here marks the halfway point of the garden. So we'll be duplicating what we have here over on this side over here, and then up here in the front there will be a 14-foot planter garden with a gate over here and a gate over here. And as you can see, I've been putting up cattle panel from Tractor Supply, and this is what will keep the deer out. It's a 6-foot height, and hopefully they won't see room enough to jump into it, but that is yet to be determined. So let's go cut some cattle panel and I'll show you how that's done. So earlier this week I took a trip out to Tractor Supply and got these 8 cattle panels. They're 50 inches tall and they're 16 feet wide, and you saw how I was going to use them to keep the deer out of my planter garden. So I have one here on the ground that I'm ready to cut, and let's get to it. I use a bolt cutter to cut it, but I didn't have a very big bolt cutter, so it takes a lot of effort. If you have a bigger bolt cutter and you want to cut this stuff, it would make life much easier. So I've already measured this to the proper size for the next piece I'm installing. So it's just a matter of getting your bolt cutters on there. And because mine are so small, I have to use the ground for leverage. And then just cut them all. So we'll be back when this is all cut. So this piece is cut, and all we have to do is lift it up, and it fits properly on this railing here that goes all the way around the outside. And then before we staple it in place, we can just throw a clamp on it, and that'll hold it in place while we get our stapler ready. Now you can use regular hammered staples, but I have a stapling gun that shoots just the right staple to hold this in, and I'll get a close-up of that. So many years ago, I bought a pancake compressor. I think it was Home Depot, but it came with 4 different nailing guns, or maybe 3, but I think 4. And this is a stapling gun that I never really used. It shoots 1/4-inch staples, but it seems just the right amount to hold this cattle panel up. You have to center the plunger exactly on the wire for it to go on both sides, but it seems to hold it in place really well. And so I usually do like every other square, and that should be enough to keep all of this in place. We'll do one more up here, and then I will be back when I'm done. And a couple of more things I wanted to mention. If you saw this bucket with holes in it sitting there in that previous clip, I'm going to be doing what's called worm towers, and worm castings that are left by worms are one of the best things you can do in your garden. And so these are just 2-gallon buckets that I've drilled 3/8 of an inch holes in, equally spaced around, and a few in the bottom. And then I'm going to bury these up to that rim there. I'm going to put 4 in the whole garden, but I'm going to do 2 of them right away. And then I'm going to fill them with a little bit of compost, and then a bunch of kitchen scraps, and then other things that you would normally throw in a compost pile. And then the worms will come and eat all that stuff that's in there, and then take it back out into the garden. Now worms need four things basically. They need warmth, they need moisture, they need food, and air. So the top, I've cut 3 holes in to aerate it. They also need darkness too. But I cut these holes in the top, and I've heard that this attracts flies, this kind of system, so I hot glued aluminum screen over the holes, so hopefully that'll keep the flies out. But I just wanted to explain why there was a white bucket in my picture. And also, the original intent in the garden was to use just the 2x4 tops, but they're uncomfortable to sit on, so I started putting in this top rail. And I don't know, it takes a while to figure out all the dimensions and things like that, and I had an idea one night when I couldn't sleep, and I invented these 2 funny looking things here. One is left side and one is a right side, and they're made up of 3 pieces of 2x4, and the top, the ones you're looking at there on top will help this center on the top of the wall. And what this will do is you just get a 2x4, cut your normal miter on one side. Well, let me get out of the shadows here. You cut your normal miter on one side and you leave the other side a little bit long, and then you take the jig that I made. I got the wrong one in my hand, but you place the jig on the center of the wall, and then you just slide it over to where you have the proper mark. You make sure that the bottom, I'm sorry for all the movement, you make sure that this 2x4 you're about to cut is centered on the wall of the box, and then you can just slide the jig over and draw your line and then cut it, and it's the perfect size, and it just makes going all the way around really fast work. So those are just a few of the tips that I wanted to convey in this video. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, hit the little like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit the subscribe button and then press the bell. That'll notify you when future projects are coming. And there will be future projects, especially for the CNC people and the woodworking people. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.